Audio Unleashed.
Let's start all over.
Let's do it.
It's going to be a new beginning for the Audio
Unleashed
podcast.
Cool.
That wasn't a very good Unleashed.
Sorry, man. I'm tired. I'm sleep deprived.
Fresh. Who's not? It's going to be a fresh beginning for Audio Unleashed. Our new philosophy is to be an island of calm and rationality in this crazy world we live in. Kind of like the Waltons, but for audio.
Good night, Brent.
Yeah, I never actually saw that.
Really? Oh man, that was
sorry,
like
some 70s kid listening to Led Zeppelin was not going to watch the Waltons.
Oh, I was a 70s kid listening to Led Zeppelin and watching the Waltons, but I didn't have a choice, man.
You were like 5.
I was like 5. That's true. But, we had like 3 channels and I was the remote control, but I didn't get to decide how the remote control worked. I was voice activated.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some interesting topics. Probably a little more. We're going to branch out a little bit and talk a little bit about some other formats that are outside the usual that we talk about. Mm-hmm. And vinyl. We don't talk that much about vinyl, but we're going to talk about it now because the New York Times did a really, really bang-up story about Chad Kassem, who runs Acoustic Sounds, which is a company that makes special vinyl releases and has done so for I think about 40 years now, and they do them out of a little town in Kansas, right? And
same place Martin Logan's from, right?
I can't remember. Oh, that's a long time. Martin Logan's, who knows where they're from now. But
I mean, originally, I think they're originally from Salina.
Salinas?
Is it called Salina? Salina?
Salinas. I spent the night there once.
Oh, cool.
When we were moving from Denver to Chicago. And we were right by a train track. It sucked. But anyway, anyway, it went really deep into, the whole vinyl resurgence and how this guy, the kind of things that this guy does in terms of special releases and how he does them and the kind of care that they take and how he got into the business and the whole big, long thing. So that's going to be episode 1. We're going to talk about a little bit, especially because a lot of our readers will not have New York Times subscriptions, so they may not be able to actually get on this thing.
Our readers? I think you mean our listeners.
The people that listen to the sound that comes out of the speakers or out of the headphones. The listeners, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I've been writing print for my whole life.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to adjust.
I know.
So what's next?
So next, we're going to talk about a video from Cheapaudioman. The headline is...
Who's he?
Cheapaudioman, popular YouTuber, talks about cheap audio. I think it's fair to say he's a little bit controversial, but a nice guy, and he's got a good shtick going, got a good thing going, good little vibe, and look, man, if you can carve out a niche in this industry, carve it out. And he has done that.
I agree.
He's got a new video up called Don't Waste Money on These Audiophile Traps in all capital letters. And I wish he'd done chapter breaks for this because it would have been easier to revisit the topics individually. But basically, a few top level things that I remember off the top of my head. He talks about, don't assume you always need balanced audio cables or that balanced audio is always better. He talks about things like, spending more. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that spending more is definitely going to get you better performance. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you absolutely need room treatments. He goes through a list of things, and overall, I agree. He's got some pretty good advice here, and so we're going to break that down, talk about what we agree with, what we don't agree with, and then what are we going to dig into?
We're going to segue gracefully, because I'm going to do the segue, into an article from Tape Op, which is a hipster cool magazine that goes out to recording professionals and recording professional wannabes like you and me. And It's called Dan Johnson, Preserving the Past. And this was like a deep dive into something that we don't normally think about is, we think about all these re-releases and all this kind of stuff, but we don't think that much about, well, how do they do those re-releases? And this guy's whole job, his entire job is, well, he's called an archivist, and he finds, people send him all these old tapes and things, and things from all sorts of different formats, and he figures out how to get them to play. And he's got a collection of really old, all sorts of old machines. And we think of recording as being on reel-to-reel tape, mostly all old recordings, but there were a lot of interim digital formats that are no longer made. There were different tape standards. There were all those different. There was 1-inch 16 track, 2-inch 16 track, 2-inch 24 track. There was a half-inch 16 track. And so he's got all this stuff, and he actually goes in and he gets these tapes, some of which have been in like floods and things like that. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. It is kind of
wild to read about, man. That was crazy.
Yeah. And for our Patreon subscribers, right? Our Patreon readers.
No, back up. You had it right, and you went right past it. So we've talked about the Your Morning Coffee podcast before, which is one of your favorite podcasts for sure, and a podcast that I definitely love. And there's a new fascinating discussion that they had with Benji Rogers, who is the head of a company called Surreal AI. That's Sureel AI. They had a conversation with him talking about sort of his company's approach to AI music generation, what makes it different from other companies that are, basically training on previously released and previously made music and creating new music from that. So basically, let's say you feed it the entire library of Taylor Swift or something like that, and then it can go and figure out all of the little what does this have in common and create a new Taylor Swift song that nobody's ever heard and that Taylor Swift had nothing to do with. Well, this company's got a slightly different approach. So he talks about that a little bit and talks about, in general, how AI is being used in the music sphere and outside of the music sphere. So we're going to dig into that a little bit, talk about our impressions. And I think I'm going to be a little more grumpy than you in this segment, but that's okay. So,
well, I found it revelatory in terms of the way that he's looking at AI more. I mean, he's a music industry guy, I guess, but he's looking at AI more from the coder perspective, which I thought was really fascinating from a musical standpoint, because we look at it from a musical standpoint, and he's like, once you get to the coder, it's completely different.
Right.
So that'll be fun. Yeah. Or depressing. Fun and depressing at the same time.
Yeah. It's going to be like a French film.
That could be our new tagline. Fun and depressing at the same time.
Oh, that's gonna sell. We should put that on t-shirts.
That's really gonna reel in the readers.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely correct about that.
I am the master of all media.
Yeah. Oh,
all dead media.
Which is most of it.
Speaking of dead media.
Yeah. Let's talk about vinyl, man.
It came back to life.
Let's talk about our corporate overlords here. So, I think this article is getting quite a bit of attention on social media, or at least as far as I could see from the little bit of engagement I've had with social media in the past week or so. I've seen a lot of people sharing this story. You're the one that put it in the idea board. Like, what drew you in other than the obvious?
Oh, the pretty pictures. There's a lot of good pictures and video as well. My colleagues at the New York Times do a pretty nice job of that nowadays. Yeah. And I kind of heard about this guy. I think I've seen him on social media. And, he's one of these audio industry people that I just never seem to have bumped into at a show or anything like that. He's about my age. He's 62. So he's been in it about as long as I have. And the whole sort of point of this thing is, the title is The Wizard of Vinyl is in Kansas. And it's like, well, this guy's in this little town in the middle of Kansas. It's actually near the geographic center of the 48 contiguous states. where grain elevators and a giant frozen pizza plant jut out from the flat plains landscape.
Yeah.
But he has, I think that, probably that location has allowed him to do this because real estate costs have got to be pretty low. And, and probably labor costs are pretty low as well. But he has created this sort of, fairly giant business in terms of, doing re-releases. I don't think they do any new releases at all. It's all re-releases. And it could be, relatively recent things, but a lot of it is old jazz stuff. And, and also really old pop stuff. And he goes into a lot of detail about how, he only works from analog masters, which that's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Because as we'll talk about in the third segment, some of those are in really horrific shape. And some of them probably, I don't know, man. I don't know about working from analog masters necessarily. We've kind of talked about that a little bit in the past, but it's a little bit, working from an analog master that's been pieced together and fixed up. Is it necessarily better than a good digital master? Well, I don't know. Part of it is the backstory. I mean, this guy partly lives on backstory,
Yeah.
Because you're going back to the original analog tape, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this is what the artist originally heard in the studio or whatever, and that kind of thing. Although, let's face it, I mean, he's talking about Yes, Fragile here, and the a 2-disc 45 RPM edition for $60, which seems kind of reasonable for 2-disc 45 RPM. I'm sure it's on 180 gram vinyl or something. I mean, like I look at that, I'm like, maybe I should buy that. But it's funny because they're also talking about how that's analog. So it's great to go back to the analog original on something like Fragile, which was probably recorded on 16 track, I'm guessing, because it was 1971. And they were it was one of the first 16-track machines, I guess. But he's talking about how, this is Analog Productions, which is the parent company's third iteration of that album in 2 decades. And there's also a Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab version, and there's a Rhino version, and there's all these different versions, which I guess you can just go buy all these different versions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if... I think most of these guys, they talk a lot about his process of how, going back to the analog original and getting, Bernie Grumman, who's one of the most famous mastering engineers and has been for decades, getting Bernie Grumman to go over it and all that kind of thing, and how he, he presses up, most record labels will, before they approve before they run the vinyl, they make a lacquer master, right? They basically lathe cut a record and they listen to it. And in this case, though, he actually presses test records before he approves the lacquers just to see what the records will be like.
Yeah.
The actual product that the consumers will buy, which I thought was really cool. And of course, it's expensive and it takes a lot longer and it's a big pain, but that's pretty awesome, I think. I mean, there's some things this guy says that I think are kind of, I mean, he's a vinyl, what's the word I'm looking for?
Evangelist? Maybe
Evangelist. Yeah. I mean, he talks about how, vinyl is clearly better. And, the writer, to his credit, does actually listen to, the Acoustic Sounds version of Asia, Steely Dan, and likes it better. But it sounds as Floyd Toole so often says, different, therefore better.
Right.
And is it really better? It's different. Technically it's just not possible for it to be better, right? Because you have to, as Bernie Grumman himself told me, to get the inside grooves to work, you have to roll it off above like 15K. And then, of course, you're also rolling off the bass and going back through, you're filtering the whole thing. You're going back through a reverse filter, RIAA or whatever. Almost always RIAA, the use of old what Columbia and Decca filters. That hasn't been since the 50s. But you're going back through a lot of stuff, and there's a lot that can go wrong, and there's just no way vinyl is going to be somehow more accurate than digital or more close to the source. It just can, but you might subjectively think it sounds better, and that's fine. And you might enjoy holding the record up and reading the record, and I sure did when I was a kid. And
I mean, look, I fell into the whole like original master tapes trap a little bit, and then don't regret it. I mean, look, I started collecting vinyl about a year ago. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't start collecting vinyl about a year ago. When I bought a record player a year ago, I already had like 25 records that people had bought me for Christmas or whatever, things like that. And a lot of them were just collectibles or, Kickstarter rewards or things like that, or records that I had bought from artists at shows, just to support them and things like that. But I started listening to vinyl actively about a year ago. And, Rhino has this new series called Rhino High Fidelity, where everything is remastered from the original master tapes. It's all AAA, and I think Kevin Gray doing like the masters or whatever. And, I bought their version of Grateful Dead to American Beauty, even though I had zero intention of buying any Grateful Dead on vinyl. And then, I've got like 3 different CD versions of that album. What do I need the vinyl for? But I thought, well, this is going to be one of the last times they're going to hit those original master tapes again. And it's pretty limited. There's only a few thousand numbered copies. Yeah, I don't want to regret not owning this down the road. And I listen to it and I enjoy it. I enjoy the process of dropping the needle on that album, those songs that I love so much. Does it sound any better than the 2004 remaster or the 50th anniversary remaster? Not really, but there's something kind of special about just my mental state when I listen to it, and knowing that this might be the last time I hit the master tapes, knowing that somebody took a lot of care in doing it. The packaging, the aesthetic, I enjoy it. I don't regret buying it at all. But so I don't think you have to fully buy into the magical thinking that I think permeates this story. And I don't think you have to truly believe that it is superior to nonetheless get something out of it. Come to it on your own terms. You don't have to buy into the hype, but there's still something kind of special about these releases that are done with intentionality, done with care, done lovingly, to produce something that is not just, another mass market release. I kind of dig that.
So there's a whole area of audio that you and I really are somewhat deaf to. And that's this whole, we talk about it a little bit, but like this whole, retro thing. And, did I tell you I went to a Jazz Kissa thing?
You told me you were going to, but I haven't talked to you since you did.
Okay, so it's called Shibuya, and it's in Seattle. It's in a neighborhood called Ballard, and which is a kind of a hipster neighborhood. And it's interesting. There's no sign or anything on the door, but you go in, and it's this really super, super stylish, cool bar. And they have like a couple of, I think the bar itself has JBL L100s. And the sort of big seating area has Altic, like Voice of the Theaters. And then, but then they have a listening room, and you pay $20 to go listen to a record in this room. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they have some Clipshorns that were from like the 60s, right? And, you can actually go look at them. They're all kind of open on the back, and you can see the hand-wired crossovers and all that kind of stuff. They're powering them with a Luxman amp, and they have... Oh, I hate myself. Oh no, I know the turntable. They have it's the Techniques, the 1200, right? And wait, I think it's the new version of the 1200 that they just came out with, if I remember correctly. And they had like a high-end Audio Technica cartridge, like one of the really fancy ones, not the $30 ones you go buy. And and we listened to the first Led Zeppelin album, and there were other guys there, like they do a pretty good business, right? And the guy does a whole presentation, and he talks a little bit about the album, and then they play it. And, I've heard Clipshorns once or twice before, and, more than once or twice, lots of times, but, they're in the corners. And so you're not getting a real solid center image. And and it was very kind of spread out and, kind of a little ethereal compared to normal, direct radiating speaker placement. And it sounded okay to me. I mean, I would rather have like just a good set of cones and domes speakers placed normally with whatever amp, right?
Yeah.
My own system, I think, actually sounds better. But it was interesting and it was fun. And then the guys that were there were hardcore into it. They were like really into it. Yeah. So, it's a thing. I'm trying to get, there's a pop-up Jazz Kiss, a thing that happens in Seattle that I'm trying to get on, but it's one of these kind of things. It's really a pop-up. It's like, okay, we're doing this, you got to, I guess, rush to get in on it. But it was a good hang. It was fun. Yeah. It was, so it's like, but the fidelity, they may think the fidelity's great, but it's retro fidelity. It's throwback. It's like driving a 60s VW Bug has its own appeal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to perform as well as any modern car, but it's, it's fun, right? Yeah. Or riding an old Ducati motorcycle or something, right?
Well, there's a record store. There's a record store up the road from me in Prattville called Classic Audio and Records. I wrote a story about them, but they do monthly listening parties where people can bring their own records in, and they'll play your favorite track and everybody sort of plays their music for each other. And the system they listen over is a pair of clip horns in the corner, previously owned by Hartley Peavey. And the system that they are playing it through is an old H.H. Scott integrated amp kit that was built by Hartley Peavey. So, and there's just something a little bit cool about the provenance of it. I mean, is it the best sounding system in the world? No, but it's got personality and it's got history and it's got mystique and it's got vibe, and that's pretty cool.
And you can appreciate that. That can be just as enjoyable as listening to the most perfect Wilson audio system or whatever. Yeah. I shouldn't say perfect, the most expensive, super, super crazy stuff that we see at most audio shows these days.
Yeah.
So it might be more enjoyable for you. It's up to you, listener. See, I got it right that time.
You did get it. Good job.
But it's up to the listener to decide how they want to listen to these things. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah. So I think it's kind of cool. It's getting people into music and they're listening to music. And, I kind of, I don't know. I'd like to dig deeper on it, and I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Bible, anything else you want to say about this one, or we pretty much run the course on this?
I think it's fine. This guy seems like I have not met him, but he seems like a tamer version of Michael Fremer, who was quoted in this article, which is a very wise decision by the New York Times, because if you don't quote Michael Fremer in every article about vinyl, he will get on the comments section and trash you and then start trashing all your readers.
Yeah. Quoting Michael Fremer is harm reduction. Let's wow. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, let's take a break. I need to go refill my water, bud, and listen to some music, and we'll be right back to talk about audiophile traps.
All right.
To Audio
Unleashed.
And this time around, we're talking about a video from Cheapaudioman. So Randy has dug into, I don't know the exact number, man, because he doesn't do chapters, so I can't remember, but he's got like, I don't know, 8, 9 topics, audiophile traps that he says you shouldn't fall into, and kind of breaks them down. And, I gotta admit, like, I watch a lot of Randy stuff. I do. Not all of it, but I watch a lot of it. I don't think I would have watched this one if you hadn't put it in the idea board, because it just, the title was a little too clickbaity for me. And this is a topic that I don't know. I kind of worried it was going to go places that wouldn't resonate with me. Let's put it that way. But I thought a lot of his points were really good here. I thought he's got some overall good advice mixed with some stuff that maybe I have a slightly different take on. But overall, I thought it was really, really good. What stood out to you? Like, something grabbed you and made you go, this needs to go on the idea board. What was it?
Look, if I sent it to you, either I hated it or I loved it. So,
so which was it?
I loved it. I thought, this really, I wish someone had told me this stuff like decades ago. I might not have believed it, but, it takes a lot of years to get some of this stuff to really process some of these ideas and start to realize that, so much of what goes on in audio, and I guess lots of other things, is just consumerism rather than, a real desire for better music reproduction. And I think it wasn't until I started playing music seriously, what was it, about 10 years ago, that I really started to realize, like, wow, all these audiophile people that are posturing, or, these audiophile manufacturers that are posturing around about being such, masters of music, and they understand music. They don't know anything about music.
Yeah.
A few of them do. Yeah. Most of them don't. So a lot of it's consumerism. So it's like he's talking, my favorite part of this is that, he talks a lot about some things that I've tried to tell people, like, the notion that spending more money is going to make you happier. I mean, that's a consumerist sentiment. And sometimes, it's true. And sometimes, you just want something fancier and you just feel like you should get it. And you probably should, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of cases where you really don't have to. And he points out that, like, look, with a lot of these really fancy amplifiers or whatever, right? Or DACs or something. I think he specifically targets DACs. He says a lot of the more expensive product, the only real difference is the chassis is a lot more expensive. Fancy machined aluminum and things like that. And it is, it's kind of legit. I mean, I know a lot of these companies are spending, $8,000-$10,000 on getting the metal machine for these things. Yeah. So it's not like they're ripping you off, but it's with a lot of this really high-end, super rich guy gear, these amps that are $40,000, $50,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
A big chunk of what goes into them is the metalwork. And,
right.
If you like that, that's fine. It's like having a fancy watch, if you want to go buy a $20,000 watch, hey, they look cool.
But the thing is, here's the thing, though. A lot of watch manufacturers who are making luxury stuff talk about the materials, right? That's their selling point. Yeah. Whereas these people who are making, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 DACs, they're not talking about the chassis. They're not talking about the milled aluminum. They start talking about the reconstruction filter as if there's $50,000 worth of reconstruction filter, and they'll be really quick to use filters like apodizing slow roll-off filters, not because that is technically what they need or what they're going for, but because the word apodizing, or however you pronounce that, sounds fancier than the linear phase fast roll-off or whatever. They're making it sound like it's about the technology when it's not. So, the watch manufacturers are more honest.
Yeah, and they give you more reason to buy it when they adopt these whatever technologies. It's something to talk about in the marketing materials, right?
Yeah.
And look, there are certainly cases where, hey, they've tried a bunch of digital filters and they really think this one's the best. But what does that really matter? They think it's the best. You might not.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that he talked about the difference between balanced and unbalanced connections.
Yeah.
And how, for the most part, balanced connections really don't do you any good in a home environment where it's probably not really that noisy and you don't have long cable runs.
Yep.
So
although I did like the fact that he gave a valid use case for balanced headphone cables. Because, the way he explained it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's legit. You're gonna get a little extra gain out of that cable, even though it's a short run. And I thought his technical explanation of when you should use balanced was really good.
Yeah, and also, he did point out that the connectors are generally much higher quality. I mean, I have balanced my cables I built in around 93, 94 or something like that, that I've never repaired.
Yeah.
And these cables have literally been to Europe. They've been to Asia. They've been through 5 or 6 jobs I've had. They've measured speakers. They've done recording sessions. They've just been all over the place. And every 10 years or so, I put the cable part in the sink and scrub it, because there's a blue one and a red one for, left and right. Yeah. And I scrub it to get the filth off of it. But other than that, I mean, the strain reliefs on the cables, they're Neutrik connectors, so they're good. The strain reliefs on the cables are definitely starting to kind of crack a little bit because, it's rubbery plastic stuff or whatever. Yeah. So it's like I could replace those, but I have to resolder the cables. And honestly, my soldering back then was probably better than it is now because I did it a lot more.
Yeah.
I was fresher off of my jobs on assembly lines doing soldering, which you have to be good.
Yeah.
You can't get away with cold joints and stuff. Because somebody's going to inspect it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was good back then. I don't solder that much now. I'm pretty quick and dirty with my soldering. But I also how did you like his room treatment discussion?
I was kind of neutral on that one. I mean, I thought for the most part he's got a really good point, but one of the things that I got a little frustrated with is I didn't think he fully sold me on the idea of people getting addicted to room treatments. I mean, I thought he was stretching this point to make a point, and he kind of lost the plot a little bit. I mean, it's a good point. Yeah, a lot of people place too much emphasis on professional room treatments, but where he took it kind of ended up not being satisfying for me. What about for you?
Well, I feel like I have a little bit of a unique take on room treatments because I've made so many of them. And because way early in my career, I read, the Master Handbook of Acoustics by F. Alton Everest, and now it's been augmented by Ken Pullman. And, I understood acoustics, far better than almost any audiophile, better than the vast majority of reviewers, and also even in some cases better than the people that actually make this stuff. Because it's all right there. This is all just physics, but a lot of people don't really catch up on the physics. And so my whole thing with acoustics is just, be sure and get stuff. And Floyd Toole says this in his book, be sure and get stuff that's thick enough to actually do the job. That's where people make their big mistake. And that's where I might have, but also there's another point to be made. And that's that, unless the room is really bad, your ears do adapt to it to some extent. I mean, if you have an all glass room with a floor that has, no rug or anything on it, or just all drywall, that's super reflective, it's just not going to sound good. And you're going to get flutter echo that actually does bother you.
Oh yeah.
To your point of that you always make about the distraction model of hi-fi. And, flutter echo will bother you. You will hear cymbals going, and you'll be like, you can't tolerate it. Every room I've ever had that had flutter echo, I got rid of it real fast.
Yeah.
But, I think he has a certain skepticism about the whole thing. And I think that is worthy. So I'm kind of okay with it. Another thing that he said, though, that I really enjoyed was that he pointed out the whole constant acquisition thing.
That was the point I was about to bring up. The falling into the trap of always thinking you need something new. And I run into a lot of this with readers who are just like, hey, I need a new X. Like, which one should I get? And it's like the first question I always ask them is like, what are you hearing that is bothering you? Like, what is this not doing for you? Or what is it doing that bothers you? And 9 times out of 10, the answer I get back is, well, I just want something better. Okay, better how? Like, what are you hearing that you're not liking? Or what are you not hearing that you would like to hear? Well, I feel like I need a better, whatever. And it's like, okay, like I realize that my income sort of depends on you buying things from the people who advertise on the pages I write for. But like you're emailing me right now. We're having a private conversation. You don't buy something unless you need something or you really want something. And if you just really just want something, go buy something that you think looks cool, man. But why? Why do you need this new thing other than just you want a new thing? Hey, that's a valid thing, but admit that that's why you want it.
Well, yeah, and it's fun. It's fun to change your gear out, and it's fun to, it keeps you engaged in the hobby. There's a kind of a relevant quote that I saw in Tape Op, which we're going to talk about shortly, but not this quote. It was an interview with Phineas O'Connell, who's Billie Eilish's half brother, who does all the production on her stuff, and the interviewer, I can't remember who it was talking about how they were talking about musical instruments and what musical instruments to have and stuff like that. And he was quoting Neil Young, and Neil Young apparently has a lot of guitars, and his attitude is, hey, every one of those guitars, I got at least a couple songs out of.
Yeah.
It's inspiration for him. And it's like, if it's inspiring to you to listen to more music and stuff by getting a new DAC or a new phono cartridge or whatever turns you on, then that's great. I mean, I think if you, in some, the thing that really matters is speakers, right? So I would say get a good set of speakers and maybe don't change those out so much. But the other stuff you can change out pretty harmlessly. And if you just feel like changing the system around, I mean, even cables, if you really want to do that, so I thought it's good to understand that, though. And it's good to understand that, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to get you to buy more stuff.
Yeah.
And really, in a sense, you and I, and every other reviewer kind of makes a living off of that. Yeah. So we're not here to condemn that, but just be aware of it, that there's a lot of people that are trying to sell you something. And, do you need better speakers if you have bad speakers? Well, yeah. Sure. Go get some speakers. They don't have to be expensive, though. But, do you need a better amp? You probably don't.
Yeah. I got to say, I really, really did like the point that he made about don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need big floor standing speakers for big sounds. Big advocate of 2.1 or 2.2 channel stereo. And I thought he made some good cases for it, although he didn't make the case that I normally make, and that I'm sure would be your biggest point for 2.1, in that like the best place for a bass generating transducer in your room is almost certainly not going to be where you should place speakers for good stereo imaging and sound staging, right? I think he positions it more in terms of having them in separate boxes allows him to tweak the relative bass level easier. I don't know. I don't know if I really resonate hard with that, but I do like the notion that like you can put your subwoofer in the place that is best suited to reproducing bass frequencies in your room, and sort of delocalize that from where your speakers that are actually creating the sound stage and imaging. So,
wait. I think Rel Acoustics might disagree with all of this, so we better backtrack.
Okay.
Because, they're kind of into putting the subwoofers next to the speakers. And also it's important to reproduce things from 29 hertz down. And it's critical, and you just spend $15,000. I'm referring back to our last
You are. Good
thing,
callback.
but still, this is in complete opposition to the ideas they present. Except his idea has merit, and it's extremely easy to back up this idea with listening or with measurements or whatever you want. Every piece of actual data, i.e., not just something somebody made up. Every actual piece of data points to his solution here. And I would just add, though, that like if you're listening to jazz, you don't need deep bass reproduction. It's not in the music. There's a lot of music that deep bass reproduction is not in. So, I mean, most music, there's nothing below 40 hertz or 41 hertz, which is the low E on a standard bass. Yeah. And so anyway, but I was just like, yeah, this is just such good common sense stuff. Yeah. And, I basically pretty much agree with everything he said, really.
Well, bone to pick. I'm not, okay, I don't like the last point that you don't need to match your speakers, like especially in a surround sound. And he says, maybe you want to match your
center.
Yeah, he says maybe you want to have your center channel timbre matched with your left and right. Maybe not, but maybe, yeah. But surrounds, don't worry about it. And his reasoning is because there's just so little information in the surround channels. But I think one of the potential, when I was first getting into surround sound, the biggest problem that I ran into with having mismatched speakers, because my first system was just sort of cobbled together from what I could buy from Goodwill, and if you had speakers with radically different timbre, maybe that didn't matter as much. But if they had radically different timbre, they probably also had radically different impedance, and that it was really hard to get. It was hard to maintain the right balance between the front and the rear with very mismatched speakers, So
yeah, and they'll have different sensitivity.
Yeah, I'm not buying that last point, but. Hey, you can't get them all right.
Well, the center thing is critical, and the surrounds, I do believe, are far less critical. And let's face it, a lot of the dedicated surround speakers that people have made are not all that terribly well timbre matched to the front speakers. A lot of times they have a radically different design. A lot of times they have radiating patterns that are completely different. Obviously, because they're surrounds, right? So they're supposed to create an enveloping effect. And that goes all the way back to the THX stuff, which had the original THX receivers and all that kind of stuff had a timbre matching circuit in there that was designed to make the surround speakers sound more like the fronts.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not sure that, I never heard anybody say that really worked. And I don't know if THX certified surround processors are even a thing now.
Pretty sure the new Onkyo is THX certified. Maybe the one I just reviewed. Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, I just I want to recap. I know I kind of ended on a negative note there, but I just want to reiterate. I think most of Randy's advice here is really good, and I think he makes some really good points. And I think if you have in the past maybe sort of skipped over some of his stuff, give this one a try. I think he's got some good practical advice. He's got some good technical info here. I don't agree with 100% of it, but hell, man, I don't agree with 100% of what you say, especially with regard to the Grateful Dead.
Well, I've come around to the opinion that the Grateful Dead don't necessarily suck.
Oh, man, I'm going to make sure that's on your tombstone. Anyway, hey, you're supposed to do the segue for this one, man.
Oh, that's right. I was promising a smooth segue. So we're going to go now from. Oh man. Oh, this is a tough one, man. This is like going from the Grateful Dead to Chapel Roan. All right, so that's a contemporary recording artist, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So, I didn't know if you get Chapel Roan down in Alabama.
We do, yes.
But anyway, we're going to go from talking about really good, basic, down-to-earth ideas to something that is really quite esoteric, but I think that audiophiles will find absolutely fascinating because I learned a lot from this and I kind of thought I knew all this.
It was pretty good. I wasn't your best segue, but it was pretty good.
No.
I'll give you a B.
Okay, I give myself a C+, but whatever.
All right,
we'll
you're
be back.
always your harshest critic, so
We'll be back soon.
All right, we'll be right back.
And we're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
Oh, that was a different little take.
It was.
weird.
I'm taking inspiration from you. I'm trying to mix it up a little bit.
That was like something out of one of those weird dragon movies in the 80s or something.
Like The Last Dragon?
Yeah, maybe. There were a bunch of movies back then in the 80s that were kind of like that. And
man, The Last Dragon
anyway.
is seriously one of my favorite 80s movies, man. Like, come on. Show enough. Kiss my Converse.
I don't really actually remember it, but whatever. So let's talk about this dude. And well, this is from Tape Op. And this guy's name is Dan Johnson. And the article is titled Dan Johnson, Preserving the Past. It's by Larry Crane, who is the founder, editor of Tape Op, which is the coolest print magazine extant.
Heck, yes.
In my view, and in the view of anybody who's got good taste in magazines, which is a dwindling number of people.
That's like my second favorite print magazine. Well, I only get 2 print magazines at this point. So, but
what, High Times and Tape Op?
No, Jacobin and Tape Op. So,
I don't even know what that is.
You probably wouldn't dig it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I get Tape Op and Audio Express.
Oh, nice.
And Ukulele 3.
Oh, very cool.
So this guy, Dan Johnson, this was fascinating to me. He works out of Burbank. And so, he's around a lot of audio production there. And, he was a guy who was a recording engineer and kind of fell into this archivist deal of having to, they'd have a lot of old tapes and somebody would have to find a way to play them. And, when they want to do a re-release of something and they want to go back to the originals, just like we were talking about with Chad Kassem. And, he just kind of fell into it and found that there was a really, really good business on it. And so much of it is very, very specialized knowledge. Yeah. And there's all these different, a lot of people don't realize there were a lot of different multi-track tape machines. There were different formats. There were different head spacings. There were all kind of different, there was, as I was saying before, there was 16 track on, I definitely remember 16 track on, well, obviously 2-inch, which is the biggest tape format I'm aware of. There was 16 track on 1-inch. There was 16 track on 1/2 inch. I'm trying to remember. I think Tascam might have had a 16 track on 1/4 inch, which would have probably been bad. I'm pretty sure they did though. That's really pushing it. Yeah. But there were a lot of, more professional level machines. There were the original old Sony machines, one of which he talks about in here was, the original Sony digital machines. They recorded onto, what was it, 3/4 inch U-matic tape, I think, which was basically Betacam format. Yeah. And you got to have all the electronics working and you got to have the actual tape machine working, which is the hard part because those are mechanical and they break down and they get dirty and all that. But this guy's job is to figure out how to play these old tapes. And I was completely fascinated with how he talks about a couple of things where, he had to restore tapes that were stored in flooded basements.
Yeah. That whole passage just was like, I think my jaw was open the entire time, especially when he was talking about using Roncinol to clean the tape. And, talking about how Roncinol lighter fluid is so chemically different from alcohol. Alcohol will break the tape down, but the Roncinol clean it right up. And I'm just like, wow. Because with isopropyl alcohol, he said it's polar, so it's attracted to the stuff from the tape, whereas roncinol lighter fluid is non-polar and has a high evaporation point. So it goes on clean, comes off clean. It doesn't harden the tape at all. And it's just little things like that, little tricks of the trade. You know, I mean, a lot of that's a lost art, or, I mean, he's one of the few that's hanging on to it. So it was really, really neat. I mean, it's just stuff you're just not going to hear much of anywhere else.
Yeah. And he talks about how he went in and cleaned these tapes inch by inch, inside and outside, for 2,500 feet per reel of tape. Which to me is just, and he does it all himself because he doesn't trust anybody else to do it.
Yeah.
Which is like, I'm sure he probably makes good money doing this because he's probably the only guy who's really reliable. He talks a lot about standards, how there were a lot of, when he started out, there were not really good standards for archivists. And it's like, if you could get some kind of sound out of these things, it's like, okay, well, that's it.
Yeah.
But he's gone in and standardized it and made it like a much more dependable business so that, and he even talks about how, I mean, he talks a lot about how he can't tell, he doesn't know what the tracks are. And he talks about, again, we're going to talk about Yes here. You know, he was talking about a Yes release, and, you know, Yes used to, you know, they were recorded on 16 track way back, and, you know, I think their classic albums were all on 16 track. And so, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on those Yes recordings. And Eddie Offord, who was the engineer, would, you know, if he had blank space on a track, like let's say it was a Mellotron track or something, you know, and there's a couple of Mellotron parts on the song. If there was blank space and he needed to put a drum or something on there, he put a drum on there. So every track is like, you know, filled with all kinds of stuff. So he goes in there, and a lot of times he has no track list, you know, because it was, you know, somebody taped the track list onto the corner of the box and it got lost or it got torn or whatever. And he has to go in there and as he puts it, recreate the track sheets by ear. Like, example he gives is with Yes is kick drum, sitar, harmonica, theremin, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Not that I don't think Yes ever actually had harmonica or theremin, but whatever. But they could have. And he talks about doing, you know, 8 tracks, which that's got to be brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, he must unspool. Like, if I had to do that, I would unspool the 8 track and put it on reel to reel. And well, because the 8 track, you know, I had 8 tracks, and like when they broke, you know, the 8 track was just one reel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the tape that you listened to came out of the center of the reel, right? And it pulled out of, if I remember correctly, it pulled out of the center of the reel and then went out, and then it went back on the outside of the reel. It was a big loop of tape. And, you know, if you could pull that out and put it on a 1/4 inch reel to reel and put the right head on it, it would still play. And, you know, then you can actually kind of, I mean, I was never able to fix one of those reels where the 8 track broke and, you know, you couldn't get into the tape reels. With reel to reel, you can pull it all apart.
Right.
And you can get to anything you want really easily. Whereas 8 track, oh boy. Yeah. That's a format that I really don't miss at all. That was probably the worst format ever.
Yeah.
Unless you have a contender. Unless you have another contender.
I don't understand why it's coming back, dude. I just don't get it, man. But
I don't think it's really going to come back, because cassettes you can go in there and fix. You know, cassettes are really no big deal. Whereas 8 tracks, you really just can't.
Well, I mean, it's like, look, the latest, well, it's not an official release, but I don't know. Have I ever told you about like how King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard does their whole bootleg program?
No.
But basically, they will release the multi-tracks from their live shows to bootleggers who want to press their own, versions of them. And so they've got one album that they've never played in its entirety live called Nonagon Infinity. And the original album was just an infinite loop. It's 9 songs that the last track bleeds right back into the first track. So if you're listening to it on an MP3, you can just hit loop on it and listen to it forever. But somebody has pieced together from all of the different bootleg releases a live version of Nonagon Infinity that actually loops. And one of the formats that they've released it on is 8 track, is a brand new 8 track tape. that you can buy of this album. And I just don't get it.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense to me whatsoever why anybody would listen to that.
Yeah. But, so he transfers everything to digital, apparently. And he makes a point that he doesn't have his tape decks, the record heads have been removed or disabled.
Yeah.
So he can't accidentally record over an old tape.
Yeah.
And he transfers everything to 192.24, unless the client requests something else. This is all about digital. And so many of these things are these old weird digital formats. I mean, there was ADAT for a long time, which was on an SVHS tape, which I had one, and Alesis made it. And they were good machines, but mine died after 3 or 4 years. And I guess I could have gotten it fixed. But I'm like, I don't need this anymore. I threw it out, just put it in electronics recycling. And, by that time, we were already getting into Pro Tools and even cheaper alternatives to Pro Tools, which is what, of course, we use here at Audio
Unleashed.
And, so people just threw these decks out. But this guy has all these decks and, goes and finds the last 2 that are working. And I would actually like to have this job, to tell you the truth. It seems like it would be an awful lot of work.
I love the fact that he talks about basically the people that he's working for tried to buy the machines for him, and he's like, no, homie, man, workers should own the means of production. And so he's like, he's got kind of some of the best examples of all of this old gear. In some cases, some of the only examples. So
and that's the way I am with measurement gear. I've always bought my own measurement gear. I shouldn't say always, but certainly for the last 25 plus years.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to, you get to know that gear and you work with it a lot and you don't want to have to give it up and you don't want to have to switch to something else. But he talks a lot about the differences between the old Ampex tapes. And, I used to record on Ampex 456 because that was which he talks about, which was the industry standard. But, some of them are not, are not salvageable, I think.
Yeah.
Because the tape it sticks together. It's really bad. I mean, I guess it was revered. I seem to remember it was revered as the best sounding, but if you went to go get, I had to buy my first album I ever did, which was 1983, 84, 85, somewhere in there.
Wow.
We did it on a 1/2-inch 456 and, boy, it was already not good. I don't know what the hell happened to those reels, but it was already not good after a year. Of course, we were young. We didn't know what we were doing. I'm sure we didn't treat it with the care it deserved.
Yeah.
But it's this is the real world of audio where stuff was, commercial audio, where stuff was recorded on all kinds of stuff. And you have to go in there and figure out how to make it work again.
What was it? One of Fleetwood Mac's albums, Tusk, was recorded in 16-bit 50 kilohertz. I don't remember what was the digital format that was. I'm trying to remember. I'm throwing a bone to our listeners who love to write in and correct us. Somebody write in and correct, or tell me, what was the format that Tusk was recorded in? I know it was 1650, but I don't remember the format. But it was some crazy digital format. So. Yeah, and what what would you do with that? I mean, it's not like it became the standard. So what would you have to do if you had to go back to the original elements of Tusk?
I mean, if you had that original machine, and it worked, it was on tape. It had to be on tape.
I'm guessing, yeah,
because so much of this digital stuff was on tape up until about 20 years ago. Yeah, really, and. These machines are they were pushing the limits of, that's why they used videotape machines, because they have a lot higher bandwidth. But they were pushing the limits of the recording technology back then. And, these machines were pretty. I mean, I owned a couple. I used a couple, and they were pretty dicey. I mean, my ADAT. God, I had an ADAT. I had a thing that Alesis made that supposedly controlled the ADAT with precision, sort of like an edit controller for a video deck. And oh boy, I used it on a Chesky project. I did it when I was at Dolby. We did a Chesky surround sound sampler and test disc. And I probably still have a DVD audio of that somewhere. And in order to get the precision of the editing that I needed on it, I had to buy this edit controller thing from Alesis. And it literally worked maybe a third of the time.
Wow.
So I was having to go in there and just keep trying it and trying it and trying it until it worked. And then, keep on going. It just took forever. And because I had to deliver it on an ADAT, I think Chesky had an ADAT machine at the time. And ADAT was, I think it was 2048 maximum resolution. So I did everything at 2048. And then I think Chesky upconverted it. Ooh, big secret. Well, now the truth can be told. Chesky upconverted it through some kind of an Onkyo upconverter thing that brought it up to 2496 or something. Because it was DVD audio, so we wanted it to be 2496. And boy, getting that, I mean, I don't have any of those tapes. I don't have my ADAT machine. I don't have that damned. I wrote the president of the company a letter. In fact, I was so pissed off.
Wow.
Because it didn't work. It just didn't work. It's like they shipped this product that didn't work. And, it really, especially, working for Dolby, I was like, this is totally inexcusable. But but a lot of this stuff was just so hinky back then. And now we have, look, I mean, you say what you want, but, now we have digital recording on a laptop that is 100% dependable. And people are like, well, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Well, people will be able to read these formats in the future. I'm sorry. It's called PCM. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And I mean, will you be able to play a Reaper section? A Reaper, get into, well, is Reaper going to exist in 30 years? I don't know. But, we can, anything we do, we render out to whatever. You can render the individual tracks out. I mean, that's what we do. Like when I did my album, we rendered tracks out and swapped and went back and forth and just imported the tracks. And it was really simple. And there was not a problem. And it is perfect sound forever as long as you have some kind of a storage device that doesn't get destroyed or something. And I think
keep multiple copies, in other words.
Keep multiple copies and, go buy some cheap USB sticks or whatever.
Yeah.
And or SD cards or something like that. I mean, USB sticks are going to be readable for a long time. So I think, I mean, we don't have these problems, but a lot of the reason this guy has a business is because, there's so much focus on catalog music nowadays because of the streaming services, right? Yeah. I mean, something like 80% of what people play on streaming services is catalog. And so there's big money in catalogs. So people have these old tapes and they want to resurrect them and they want to re-release, I don't know, a Tony Basil album. Is that her name? Basil, whatever. She's the one who did Oh, Mickey.
Right. Basil.
They want to re-release that because they can, at least there'll be some recognition. They can probably sell some. And, some people from the 80s like us, not that we were probably big fans of hers, but, would want to play that over and over and they can make some money on it as opposed to some new artist now who, I mean, Chapel Roan makes money, but, the other artists that are out there aren't making any money, not getting any streams, not getting significant money from Spotify or whoever.
Yeah.
So, this is, as they keep saying on the Your Morning Coffee podcast, which we're going to talk about shortly in the Patreon segment. What do they keep saying on there?
You're the big fan, man. You tell me.
Oh, they keep saying that like it's all about catalog now.
Oh, yeah.
So take it for what it's worth. I mean, I think that's not going to bother a lot of audiophiles because probably almost all they listen to is catalog anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Come on, man. It's hard to get audiophiles to listen to anything new. When I find a new artist that I'm, absolutely gaga over, it's rarely, my fellow hi-fi writers that I take it to. So, because it's just, they're complaining about why isn't Joni Mitchell out there making protest songs? It's like, okay, come on, bud. But
do you think people listen to? Do people listen to our catalog more than they listen to our new segments?
Not more than, but it's funny. We're sort of picking up so much steam all of the time that our old episodes still get a lot of play, man. A lot more than I would have thought they do. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. Anyway, looping it back to the article we're talking about, I really liked at the end, like one of my favorite things. I don't know why this gives you some insight into my brain. But one of my favorite things is, and he talks about at the end, the archivist community, like. And there's so few of them, he pretty much names them all by name and says they have like a regular Zoom call every month or two and talk about, what they're seeing with this format or that format and trading secrets about, how to get the information off of it. And they've got a good community going. I don't know. That was just so wholesome that it made me smile. I think I grinned through the last two paragraphs because it's just neat to me. These arcane wizards who are competing with one another are still like getting together and trading secrets and helping one another, rescue music. I thought that was really neat.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. All right, bud. Well, anything else to say about this one?
No. I have some news for you.
What you got?
This will shock you.
Okay.
This is a Butterburger production.
I'm so proud of you right now. Nice. This is a Butterburger production. It's my turn to edit and mix and master and all of that. So you got the week off. Good job. What are you going to do with all that free time you got?
I got to turn a PowerPoint into a video and then add narration side project, which is going to be time consuming. So I'm glad I'm not editing this because this is going to be comparably hard compared to, editing the Audio Unleashed podcast.
Oh, interesting.
It's going to be a lot of converting these things into JPEGs and then getting the audio edited and doing a lot of touching up with the video. It's going to be a lot of work. So
fun. Do you think we're going to have new music for this episode or no? We're going to punt for the next one.
Yeah, I'll promise you some new music.
Okay.
You sent me a drum beat, and I always take those and make the best I can of them.
Well, good, man. I'm learning. I'm doing the best I can.
Well, I know some of them. Well, I prefer the ones where you just do some weird time signature, then I can just kind of ignore it.
Okay, I'll get back to that. Because see, you griped at me about that at first, and now you like it. So you untrained me, man. You got to retrain me.
Yeah, but then it kind of everything skates across each other, and it's kind of like Bad King Crimson.
Oh, nice. That should be the title of our first album, Bad King Crimson.
King Crimson without it's our first album will be called Undisciplined.
Nice. I love it.
There's our concept, right, man. All we got to do is fill in the blanks.
There you go. Right. But we're not going to use AI to do it. So
no.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah. And so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.